Of all the days of the week, Sunday was the one that nearly broke me. I want to start there, because I think anyone who lives alone knows exactly what I mean, and has never quite heard anyone say it out loud. The other days have a shape. Monday through Friday, the world is working. There are trucks on the road. The hardware store is open. The diner has people in it. The ordinary machinery of a town is running, and you're part of it whether you're working or not. Saturday has errands and chores and a particular energy to it. But Sunday the world stops. Sunday everything closes. Sunday every family in America is sitting down to a table together. And every church is full, and every driveway has the children's cars in it. And if you are an old man alone in a house at the end of a long driveway, Sunday is the day that the aloneness is loudest. I'm 82 years old. My name is Walter. My wife Helen died in October of 2017, and for the first 2 years after that, Sunday was the worst day of my week by a considerable margin. It's now my favorite, and what I want to do today is walk you through a Sunday, this Sunday or one like it, from the morning to the night, and tell you how each part of it used to hurt, and what I did about it. Because the fixing of Sunday was one of the harder pieces of work I've done in these 7 years, and one of the most worthwhile. Sit with me, the fire's going. Let's start at the beginning of the day. The waking is different on a Sunday, and it always has been, even when Helen was alive. There's a quality to a Sunday morning, something in the light, in the quiet, in the absence of the sounds of a working world, that the body recognizes before the mind does. I wake at 5:15 the way I always do, and even before I've thought about what day it is. I know it's Sunday. The house knows. There's no traffic on the road. Nothing is moving anywhere. The whole county is asleep in a way it isn't on a Tuesday. When Helen was alive, that Sunday quality was the best thing about the week. We'd lie in bed longer than usual. She'd get up first eventually, and I'd hear her downstairs, and there'd be no hurry in any of it. No schedule. No job site to get to. That slow Sunday morning, unhurried, the two of us in a house with nowhere to be, was 54 years of one of the great pleasures of my life. After she died, that same Sunday quality, the same quiet, the same absence of hurry, the same nowhere to be, turned into the worst part of the week, because the thing that had made it good was her being in it, and without her, the unhurried, empty Sunday morning was just empty. There was nothing to slow down for. There was no one to be unhurried with. The quiet that had been companionable was now just quiet, and it started at 5:15 in the morning and it went on for 14 hours. What I do now, and this took me a while to figure out, is that I get up and I start the Sunday deliberately. I don't lie in bed. That was the first mistake I made in those early years. I'd lie there because there was no reason to get up, and the lying there in the Sunday quiet with nothing pulling me was where the real damage happened. 20 minutes of that on a Sunday morning can take a whole day down with it. So I get up, same time as any other day, and I make the fire and the coffee, and I sit at the kitchen table for my 45 minutes, same as any other morning. But on Sunday I do one thing differently, which is that I put music on, not the radio, which I have on other mornings. Music, the records Helen and I had, which I kept on the record player that still works, because I've kept it working. Something quiet on a Sunday morning. She liked the hymns, some of them, and there's a recording of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir that she played on Sunday mornings for 30 years, that I couldn't listen to for about 4 years after she died, and that I now put on most Sundays. That music is the first thing that makes Sunday a Sunday now, rather than a Tuesday with nothing happening in it. It marks the day. It says, this is the different day, the good different, the slow day, the one you've always liked, and having the marker means the day starts as itself, rather than as an absence. I want to say something about markers generally, because I think this is one of the more useful things I've worked out, and it applies well beyond Sundays. When you live alone and you're retired, the days lose their distinguishing features. Nothing tells them apart. There's no work week and weekend, no schedule that differs by day, no meetings or shifts or school runs. And what happens, if you let it, is that all 7 days become the same day repeated, and a week becomes an undifferentiated stretch of sameness, and time starts to lose its shape entirely. I had a period in the second year where I genuinely did not know, on waking, what day it was. Not from confusion in the medical sense, but because nothing about a Wednesday distinguished it from a Saturday, and so the information had stopped being worth holding on to. That's a bad condition to be in. Time without shape is time that drags and blurs at once. The individual hours crawl, and the months disappear, which is one of the strange cruelties of an unstructured life. So I put markers in, deliberately. Small things that make each day different from the others. Sunday has the music and the dinner. Thursday has the call with Susan. Saturday has the diner in the morning. The first Monday of the month I do the accounts. In the fall, Tuesday afternoon is when I split wood. None of these is important in itself. All of them together give the week a shape, so that a Wednesday feels like a Wednesday, and I know where I am in the week, and time has a rhythm rather than being an undifferentiated flow. Sunday is the most important marker because it's the day with the most powerful associations already attached to it. Everyone's Sunday is different from their other days, from childhood on, but the principle applies to the whole week. If your days have blurred together, put markers in. It's a small piece of work, and it restores something surprisingly large. Then there's church, and I need to talk about church because it was a large part of what Sunday was, and I have not resolved it in the way people might expect. Helen went to church every Sunday for the whole of her life, at the Congregational church in town, and I went with her, not because I'm a particularly religious man. I've never been sure what I believe, and I'm no closer to sure at 82 than I was at 30. But because she went, and because going with her was part of the fabric of what we were. And because I liked it well enough. I liked the singing, I liked the people. I liked sitting next to my wife on a Sunday morning in a building that had been there since 1847. After she died, I stopped going. I want to be honest about why. Partly it was that the church was so completely hers that going without her was unbearable. Everyone knew us as a pair. Everyone would want to say something, and the pew we'd sat in for decades would have one person in it. And partly it was that I was angry, in a way I'm not proud of and don't fully understand, and the anger made the building difficult. I didn't go for about 3 years, and then I started going again, sometimes not every Sunday, but perhaps 2 Sundays a month. And I want to say what brought me back, because it wasn't faith, or not exactly. It was people. It was the recognition, sometime in the 3rd year, that the Congregational church in town was a room where 40 or 50 people I had known for decades gathered every Sunday morning, and that I had cut myself off from all of them at the exact moment I most needed people around me. Whatever I do or don't believe about what's said in that building, the fact of 40 people who know your name in a room together on a Sunday morning is not nothing. It's a great deal. It's more than most old men alone have available to them. So I go. Some Sundays. I sit in a different pew than the one Helen and I sat in. I made that decision deliberately, and it helped. I sing because I like the singing and always have. I talk to people afterward. Elaine is there. Marie is there some Sundays. The Sullivans go, with the baby, who is not quiet and who nobody minds. And I come home from those mornings feeling like a man who has been among people, which on a Sunday is worth a great deal. I don't want to overclaim anything about this. I'm not going to tell you I found God at 76. I don't know what I found, but I found a room with people in it on a Sunday morning. And for an old man alone, that room is one of the most valuable things in this town. And I'd been staying away from it out of grief and pride, and a kind of anger I couldn't name. I want to say more about the anger, because I've mentioned it and then moved past it, and it deserves better than that. When Helen was dying, the last few months when we knew, I found myself in a state I had no experience of. I'm not a man who prays. I never have been. But I found myself, in those months, doing something that was close enough to praying that I don't know what else to call it. Standing in the shop with my hands on the bench, asking for something, not eloquently, not even in words most of the time. Just the asking that a person does when the thing they love most is being taken, and there's nothing they can do about it. And she died anyway, of course, which is what happens, which is what has happened to every person who has ever asked for anything of that kind. I know that. I'm not a fool, and I wasn't a fool then. But something in me was angry about it, in a way I couldn't argue with. And the anger attached itself to the church, because the church was the nearest available object. And so I stayed away for 3 years. And the staying away cost me 40 people who knew my name. And the anger didn't get any smaller for my having indulged it. What I understand now is that I was angry at the fact of death, which is not something a building can be blamed for. Helen died because she was 78 and had a disease that kills people. The Congregational church in town had nothing to do with it. The people in it had nothing to do with it. In fact, several of them tried very hard to be kind to me in the months after, and I was cold to them, and I regret that. So I went back, not because the anger resolved, it hasn't entirely, and I still sit in that building on some Sundays with questions I can't answer. But because I finally separated the anger from the room, and once they were separated, the room was just a room, with people in it I'd known for 40 years, and there was no reason on earth to keep punishing myself by staying out of it. Then comes the call with David, and this is the anchor of my Sunday and has been for 7 years. David calls every Sunday. He started it a few weeks after his mother died. I don't think we ever discussed it. He just started calling on Sundays and has never missed one that I can remember, through his own difficulties and his own busy years and everything else. Some Sundays we talk for 15 minutes. Some Sundays it's 2 hours. The length isn't the point. The point is that at some hour of every Sunday the phone rings, and it's my son. In the first years, that call was the only good thing in the day, and I'd hold on to it. I'd wait for it. I'd look at the clock through the morning knowing that at some point David would call, and the knowing was what got me through to the afternoon. And that's fine. That's what family is for. But I want to say something about the danger of it because I think I was doing something unhealthy in those years, and it took me a while to see it. I was making David responsible for my Sunday. Not out loud, not by asking him to be, but internally. I had structured my week so that the entire weight of the worst day rested on a phone call from my son. And that's too much weight to put on a person. Even a person who loves you, even a person calling faithfully every week. He could feel it. I know he could feel it because there were Sundays when he'd have to call late or keep it short, and I'd hear something in my own voice that I didn't like, some small note of disappointment that he shouldn't have had to manage. What changed was that I built the rest of the Sunday. And once the rest of the Sunday was built, once the day had other good things in it, the call with David became what it should always have been, which is the best part of a good day, rather than the only part of a bad one. And the calls got better. They're better now than they were then, because he's not calling into a void anymore, and I'm not receiving him as a rescue. He's calling a father who's having a decent Sunday and wants to hear about his son's week. If there's one thing in this whole conversation I'd press on somebody, it's that. Don't make one person responsible for your worst day. Build the day, and then let the people in it be a pleasure rather than a duty. And I'd say something to the children too, if any are listening. The sons and daughters who call their widowed parents on Sundays. Keep calling, that's the first thing. The call matters more than you know, and the fact that it's regular matters more than the length of it. A father who knows the phone will ring on Sunday has something to hold on to through the week. But the second thing is this: if the call feels heavy, if you can feel the weight your parent is putting on it, if you come off the phone drained in a way that's hard to name, that's real, and it's not your fault, and it's not entirely theirs either. It's the structural problem of a life that's lost its other supports. The call feels heavy because it's carrying more than a call should carry. What helped in my case was not David calling more. It was David encouraging me, gently and over a long period, to build other things. He'd ask what else I'd done that week. He'd ask about Elaine, about the church, about the shop, about whether I'd seen anybody. Not in a checking up way, he was careful about that, but in a way that kept putting the question in front of me. What else is in your week besides me? That question, asked patiently over a couple of years, was probably the single most useful thing my son did for me in this whole period. He didn't fix my Sundays. He kept asking about them until I fixed them myself. Then comes the afternoon, and the afternoon was the killer. I want to be very specific about this because I think most people who live alone would recognize it immediately. The hours between about 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon are the loneliest hours of the week. Not the night. The night has its own difficulties, but the night is expected. The night is when everyone is home and quiet. It's the middle of a Sunday afternoon. Everything is closed. Nothing needs doing. The world is full of families having Sunday afternoons together, and you are in a chair in a quiet house with 4 hours in front of you and nothing to put in them. Those 4 hours nearly finished me in the second winter after Helen died. I'd sit in that chair and look at the clock, and it would be 2:15, and I would have absolutely no idea how I was going to get to 5. Here's what I did about it, and it's the single best thing I've done for my Sundays. I made Sunday afternoon the time when I do something for someone else. That's it. That's the whole solution. And it changed the day completely. Every Sunday afternoon, I do something for another person. Not big things. I'm 82. I'm not building anyone a house. But something. Most Sundays, it's in the shop. Sunday afternoon is when I make the things I give away. The cutting boards that go to people at Christmas. The toy box for one of the grandchildren. The cradle I made from the butternut for the Sullivan's baby. That was Sunday afternoons, most of a winter's worth. The small repairs that people bring me. Elaine's kitchen chair that had a loose leg. A neighbor's window sash that needed reglazing. A drawer that wouldn't close for a woman from the church whose husband used to do that sort of thing and doesn't anymore because he's gone. Some Sundays it's not the shop. Some Sundays I go somewhere. I take a jar of soup down the road to a woman named Dot, who is 91 and who does not get out and who is, as far as I can tell, considerably more alone than I am. I've been doing that most Sundays for about 4 years. We sit for an hour and she tells me things about this town in the 1940s that nobody else alive remembers. And I write some of them down afterward, because when Dot goes, those things go with her. Some Sundays I write letters. I have a correspondence with Lily that we've kept going for years, and Sunday afternoon is when I write my side of it. I write to a man named George who moved to New Hampshire. I write to my sister's daughter in Ohio, who I never see and who writes back. The reason this works, and I've thought about why it works, is that the loneliness of a Sunday afternoon is not really about being alone. It's about being unnecessary. It's about the specific feeling of an afternoon in which nothing you do or don't do makes any difference to anyone. And the cure for feeling unnecessary is not company. The cure for feeling unnecessary is to be necessary, to do a thing that another person will receive, to spend the afternoon on something that ends up in somebody else's hands. The cutting board I made last Sunday will be in somebody's kitchen for 30 years. The soup got eaten by a 91-year-old woman who was glad to see me. The letter will arrive in Ohio on Wednesday and my niece will read it. Those 4 hours produce something that exists in someone else's life. And an afternoon that produces something in someone else's life is not a lonely afternoon, no matter how quiet the house was while you spent it. I want to say something about Dot, because she's taught me something about all of this that I didn't expect. Dot is 91. She was a school teacher in this town for 34 years, and she taught both my children. Her husband died in 1998. She has one son who lives in Arizona and calls, I gather, occasionally. She is in that house nearly all the time and has been for years. When I started bringing her soup, I understood myself to be doing something for her. An old man doing a kindness for an older woman. Charity, more or less, done on a Sunday afternoon because I had the afternoon, and she had the need. That is not what's happening. It took me about a year to understand what's actually happening, which is that we are two people keeping each other company, and the direction of the benefit runs both ways, and possibly runs more strongly toward me. She gives me an hour of conversation with a person who has known this town since 1940. She gives me stories I would never otherwise hear. She gives me the experience of being useful, which, as I've said, is the thing I most need on a Sunday afternoon. And she gives me something else, which is harder to name. She gives me the sight of a woman 9 years older than I am who is still sharp, still funny, still interested in things, still entirely herself at 91. That's not nothing to an old man who wonders what's coming. I mention this because I think people hold back from doing things for others out of a sense that it's presumptuous, or that the other person might not want it, or that they have nothing worth offering. And what I've found is that these arrangements almost never work the way they appear to from outside. What looks like one person helping another is nearly always two people helping each other, and the person who thinks they're doing the giving is very often getting the better end of it. So if you're hesitating, if there's someone you've thought about looking in on and haven't, because you're not sure you'd be welcome or not sure you'd be useful, go. You'll almost certainly find that you're not doing them a favor at all. You're both just less alone on a Sunday afternoon, which is what everybody needs and what nobody knows how to ask for. That's the turn. That's the thing that took Sunday from the worst day to the best one. The afternoon stopped being 4 hours to survive and became 4 hours to give away. Then there's Sunday dinner, which I've talked about before, but which belongs here because it's the heart of the day. Sunday dinner was the great institution of our house. Helen cooked it every Sunday of our married life, a roast or a chicken or a ham at the holidays, with the potatoes and the vegetables, and usually something for after. Eaten in the middle of the afternoon, not the evening the way people did then. When the children were small, they were at the table. When they were grown, they came when they could. When it was just Helen and me, it was still Sunday dinner, still the full thing, still the meal that anchored the week. And after she died, I stopped it entirely. Because Sunday dinner is for a family, and I was one man, and cooking a roast for one man seemed like the saddest thing I could imagine doing. I was wrong about that. I want to say it plainly. I was wrong. I cook Sunday dinner now, every Sunday, whether anyone's coming or not. A roast chicken most weeks, or a small pot roast, or a piece of pork with apples in the fall. The potatoes, a vegetable, sometimes something for after, if I feel like it. I started around noon and it's ready around 3, the way it always was, and I set the table properly, and I sit down and I eat it. And it is one of the great pleasures of my week. Not a sad thing, a genuinely good thing. Because the meal is good, first of all. A proper Sunday dinner is a proper Sunday dinner whether there are 8 people at the table or 1. And because the cooking of it takes up the good part of the early afternoon in a way that's satisfying. And because it keeps something alive that was worth keeping alive. 54 years of Sunday dinners didn't stop when Helen did. They continued, in a reduced form, in the same kitchen, made by a man she taught most of what he knows about cooking. Some Sundays there are people at it. David's up sometimes. Susan comes when she can. I've had Elaine over, and Marie, and once the Sullivans with the baby, which was chaos and which I loved. And on those Sundays it's the full thing, the real thing. The institution restored. But most Sundays it's me, and most Sundays it's still good. And that's what I learned. And it took me 3 years to learn it. The institution doesn't require the crowd. The Sunday dinner is the Sunday dinner. It's worth doing for one. There's a thing that happens while I'm cooking it that I want to describe. Because it's one of the better hours of my week and it's not what people would expect. I cook Sunday dinner the way Helen cooked it. Same order of operations, same rough timings, same small techniques that she used and that I learned by watching her for 54 years, without ever once thinking I was learning anything. The bird goes in at a certain temperature and comes down after 20 minutes. The potatoes go under it. She had a way of doing the gravy that I do now, and I do it her way, standing at the same stove in the same kitchen. And what happens most Sundays is that at some point in those 2 hours, I feel her there. Not in any way I'd try to defend to a skeptic. I'm not claiming anything supernatural. I'm describing a subjective experience of an 82-year-old man alone in a kitchen. But the hands are doing what her hands did, in the place where her hands did it, and something in that produces a feeling of company that I don't get anywhere else in the week. I've come to think that this is a large part of why the Sunday dinner is worth doing for one person. It's not just the meal. It's that certain physical repetitions carry the dead forward better than memory does. I can sit and remember Helen and it's fine, but it's thin. I stand at that stove doing the gravy, the way she did the gravy, and she's more present than remembering makes her. If you've lost someone, and there's something they did with their hands that you learned from watching, cooking, gardening, a craft. The way they folded something or fixed something. Do it. Do it their way. It's a better way of keeping them than photographs are. Then the evening comes, and the Sunday evening has a particular quality that I've come to love, and that I want to describe. There's something about a Sunday evening that's different from any other evening of the week. Everyone knows this. The working world calls it the Sunday feeling and doesn't like it. Because for a working person, Sunday evening is the shadow of Monday morning. I remember that feeling. 45 years of it. The particular slight weight of a Sunday evening when there's a job site to be at in the morning. I don't have that anymore. That's one of the genuine gifts of being old and retired that nobody tells you about. Sunday evening loses its shadow. There is no Monday coming to spoil it. Sunday evening becomes simply the end of a good day, with another day after it that will be whatever I make it. So I sit with the fire, the good long evening fire, on the day of the week when there's least reason to go to bed early. I read. Sunday evening is my best reading of the week. I'll go 2 or 3 hours, deep into whatever I'm in the middle of. Sometimes I put music on again. Sometimes I don't. And I think about the day. That's part of the Sunday evening ritual now. Taking stock of the week that's ending and the one that's coming. What was in this week? What I made, who I talked to, what happened. And what's ahead, what I want to get done, who I want to call, what needs doing. Sunday evening is when I plan, in a loose way, the shape of the week to come. That's another thing that keeps the days from drifting. And it's a Sunday job, and then I write the one good thing on the legal pad, and I bank the fire, and I do the walk through the house, and I go up. Same as any night, but it's Sunday, so I'm going up from a day that had music and people, and a maid thing, and a proper dinner in it. The fire's burned down now. It's late, later than I usually stay up, but it's Sunday, and Sunday evening I let go on a bit. I want to say one last thing about why Sunday matters so much, because I think it's worth understanding. Sunday is the day that shows you what you've got. Every other day of the week has structure imposed from outside. Things that have to be done, places that are open, the machinery of an ordinary week that carries you along whether you're participating fully or not. Sunday strips that away. There's nothing external holding the day up. Whatever is in a Sunday is what you put there, which means that Sunday is the truest measure of a life. If your Sundays are empty, then what you actually have, underneath the busyness of the other 6 days, is emptiness. And if your Sundays are good, then what you actually have at the foundation is good. For 2 years after Helen died, my Sundays were empty, and they were telling me the truth. Underneath the surface functioning, the shop and the errands and the getting through, my life at that point was genuinely empty, and Sunday was the day that couldn't hide it. My Sundays are good now. And they're telling the truth too. There's music in the morning and people in a church and a call from my son, and an afternoon spent making something for somebody else, and a proper dinner and a long fire and a book. That's what I've got. That's what's underneath the other 6 days. And Sunday, which used to be the day that showed me the hole in my life, is now the day that shows me it's been filled. That's why it's my favorite day. Not because it's the easiest. It's still the one that requires the most deliberate building, but because it's the one that proves the building worked. If you're alone and Sunday is your hardest day, I want you to know 2 things. The first is that you're not unusual, and there's nothing wrong with you. Sunday is the hardest day for nearly everyone who's alone, and the reason is structural, not personal. And the second is that Sunday can be built. It doesn't fill itself, and it won't get better on its own, but it can be built piece by piece, over a couple of years, into the best day of your week. Mark the morning with something. Get yourself into a room with people if you can, whatever room that is. Cook the dinner even though it's just you, and above all, above everything, give the afternoon away. Find one person to do one thing for, every Sunday afternoon, and watch what it does to the day. And start small, and start soon. Don't wait until you feel like it, because you won't feel like it. That was the mistake I made for 2 years. I kept waiting to feel up to building a Sunday, and the feeling never arrived. Because the feeling comes after the building and not before it. The first Sunday I made myself go to the shop in the afternoon and work on something for somebody else. I did not want to go, and I did not enjoy the first hour of it. The wanting came later, after I'd done it perhaps 6 or 8 times, once the afternoon had proved to me what it could be. That's how it goes with all of this. You act first and the feeling follows. If you wait for the feeling, you'll be waiting a long time, and the Sundays will keep coming, 1 a week, 52 a year, whether you've built them or not. That last one is the whole secret. Sunday afternoon is not lonely because you're by yourself. It's lonely because you're unnecessary. Make yourself necessary to one person for a few hours, and Sunday turns over completely. Mine did. It's my favorite day now, 7 years on from the winter when I couldn't get from 2:15 to 5. If anything I said tonight reached you, you can subscribe to walk with me a while longer. I read every comment. Tell me about your Sundays. Tell me whether they're hard and what you've found that helps. I'd like to know, and I suspect a lot of other people would too. Take care of yourself, put the music on, cook the dinner, and give your Sunday afternoon to somebody else. The fire's banked, the coals will hold till morning, and tomorrow's Monday, which doesn't mean what it used to. I'll see you next time.